listeners, if you haven't heard about Anchor, it is the easiest way to make a podcast. So let me explain. Because first, it's free, which is one of the main reasons why I chose it. Let's be real. There are creation tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or your computer. And I use both ways in order to edit this podcast. And Anchor will distribute your podcast for you. So it can be on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and so many more podcast platforms. You can make money from your podcast with no minimum listenership. And it's really everything that you need to make a podcast in one place. Like I'm on here doing transitions, and it's just so simple, adding background music to things. Like, it is so easy. So if you're ready to start doing your podcast right now, just download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started.
Welcome to the Feminine Waters podcast, where we discuss dating, relationships, celibacy, and the divine feminine. Let's dive in.
Waters podcast, where we discuss dating, relationships, celibacy, and the divine feminine. Let's dive in.
Where we discuss dating, relationships, celibacy, and the divine feminine. Let's dive in.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the first episode of the Feminine Waters podcast with Tiffany and Chiquita, where we discuss all things dating, relationships, celibacy, and the divine feminine. Let's dive in. So, everyone, my name is Chiquita Johnson. A lot of people know me as Chiquita Afluenu. And just a little bit about me, I am a travel entrepreneur. I've been living and working in West Africa for the past 10 years. I own a tourism company called West Tourism Management. I'm also an experienced curator. I do travel planning and event planning. And I, last but not least, am a divine femininity advocate, just simply meaning I love working with women to be able to understand and tap into the divine feminine within them. All right, my girl Tiffany's here. Tiffany, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hello. I am TiffanyPye. I am a certified hypnotherapist and life coach, and practitioner of NLP, which I sometimes forget because I just got that one. And I'm a singer, songwriter, and poet. And I help people with moving past traumas, limiting beliefs, to live a fully actualized life that is, a life of freedom, a life that they desire, without anything holding them back. And that's my main focus, is helping people, discover, all the things about themselves that they've probably hidden away. And I do that through, again, hypnotherapy, coaching, NLP, poetry, workshops, different things, travel, all of that. And yeah.
All right, awesome. And today's segment is called Relationships H2O. And we will be discussing the dynamic between being in a relationship and race and or background.
So what we're talking about today is, we'll be talking about several things throughout various episodes, but the first category we want to get into is relationships. So we're going to jump into some relationship H2O. And today we are discussing race and relationships, which just seems to keep coming up a lot lately. And so we're just going to come in really strong with I guess, controversial subject.
Yes. Why not? Get the people listening.
Yeah. Okay. So first off, I want to know, we're going to be asking each other these questions, but if anyone's listening, also, feel free to share your experiences and any questions that you also have. But I want to know, how race has personally affected you and how it has factored into your dating relationships, race and or background, a cultural background has factored into your dating relationships.
Yeah, sure. So, to be honest, race has never played a factor in my romantic relationships. I mean, I've always dated melanated men, very dark, some are very light, you know what I mean? But either way, they were melanated. I did have a white boyfriend in middle school in 8th grade, but we were together for maybe 2 weeks and he was more so like a best friend. So I don't really count that. But my preference are melanated men. Not to say that I would never date outside of my race. I could never say that. But that is my preference, especially since I'm in a position right now where I'm dating with purpose. So meaning that I'm intentionally looking to date a man that eventually wants to be married and start a family. So with that being the case, a melanated man is my preferred choice. And yeah, so race has never played a factor, nor do I think it would. I think it would. I guess it could. I guess, if I were to show up anywhere with a non-melanated man, it would be a shock to my family and friends. It would be a surprise. You know what I mean? It's not something that they've ever seen before, they're used to seeing. So it would be a shock. It would be a conversation as well. Like, what sparked this off? You know what I mean? Inquiring minds would definitely want to know. So that's it in regards to race. Now, in regards to background, yes, that has played a role in my romantic relationships in the past. So as I mentioned in the intro, I've been living and working in Liberia for the past 10 years. That's where I'm originally from. And, if anybody knows the history of Liberia, they know that, there's a class system that's been in place for many, many, many years, like since the 1800s. But deaf people have definitely, we've broken past that. So it's not as much as a shock if somebody is dating outside of their tribe or dating outside of their educational background or dating, outside of, your social economic class, I guess, if you will. So with all that being said, while I was in Liberia, I did have 2 boyfriends, and both of those, one of them was college educated, which is important in my family, right? Like my family would prefer for me to date a college educated guy. And even though he was college educated, we had a very different background. He was born and raised in Liberia, you know what I mean? I was born and raised in the States. I didn't really live in Liberia until I was in my adult years. So there was this, difference in our upbringing, but to me, it absolutely didn't matter at all. You know what I mean? But I later found out that people were kind of like, there were whispers about me dating somebody who didn't come from the same, quote unquote background as I did. But it wasn't, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Amongst your family, there was whispers about it?
No, I would say more so in the community, if you will. Like Liberia is very small. There's a very tight, small community of people. So once they see somebody who's coming from America, who's me, I'm somebody who was, I was educated in America, everything like that. Society would think that I am too good to be with someone who was born and raised in Liberia. But that was never a thought in my mind, ever. Like I didn't care about that. You know what I mean? So not necessarily family, but like my community, even people that I wasn't friends with, just like gossip and stuff like that. Like I said, didn't really pay much attention to that in that relationship. It wasn't until I was in my most recent relationship, which ended, it'll be 5 years this year, is when I really started to understand that background played a role. He was a soccer player, an international soccer player. He played all over the world. He was well-traveled. He had, he was exposed, he was born and raised in Liberia. He was exposed. He only had a high school education. So just the fact that he was a Liberian football player, and because he had a high school education, people automatically thought I was way too good to be with him. Like, there's absolutely no reason why you should be with him, because there's this stigma in Liberia, like if you're a football player, you're just like anything. Like you're just I don't know how to even describe it. How can I, like, you aren't serious. You're not a doctor or a lawyer or an accountant, or you don't work for an NGO. You know what I mean? You're just like, whatever, like that's gonna fade.
Wow.
Type of stuff. So I was with this guy. I really loved him. We things started off great with us. I was very happy in that relationship, but friends, this is when friends actually started to come to me and tell me like, hey, like people are out here like talking smack, you know what I mean? Like, you are too good to be with this guy and blah, 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 blah. And even though that was the case, that had nothing to do with why we ended our relationship, why we broke up or anything. It was something that I totally decided to disregard. Like, that's you guys' problem. Like, I love this guy, we're great together, we're happy. I don't care about what you have to say. And we continued on our relationship, and it ended badly. It ended because of something completely different, nothing to do with background. But those are just my two experiences that I've had with dating outside of my background.
Okay.
Quote unquote.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Wow. Yeah, as someone who has I have an American family. I was, born and raised here. My family, generations Americans. But two of my aunts and my mother married Africans. So both of my aunts married Nigerians, and my stepfather is a Ghanaian Liberian. And so my mom is still with my stepfather, but the rest, they've all ended bad. And so like from young ages, even when my aunt was still with my uncle, it was just like, they were always telling us, don't date a foreigner, you can't be with a foreigner. And like that was like always kind of inbred in us. And like me and my cousins are just like now in the recent years starting to break out of that. Like that's really a horrible thing to tell your children. But like I understand it was like from their experiences and like the kind of guys that they picked, but I mean, I don't think it had anything to do with them being a foreigner. But like I understand like how it can be difficult to have varying backgrounds, but it was never like like I would say many times in my family, it was never like a certain lesson. It was just like, don't do it, never date a foreigner. And so like I would literally always just stay away. I know there was like some I think it was Ghanaian guy in college who really liked me, and I was just like, no.
Where was he from?
I think he was Ghanaian, I believe.
Okay.
So yeah. And then yeah, I think he was. And yeah, he would show up at my job and like try to give me gifts, and I was just like, no.
See, those African men, I've dated a few. They're very, they let you know that they're interested. And I honestly, that's why I like to date them. I'm not necessarily going to say I prefer, but I like to date them because they very much, they don't hold anything back. In my experience with Black American guys, you could be talking to somebody for 4 or 5 months and you have no idea where it's going.
No idea where you stand.
But African men, they'll let you know. Like the first guy who I was talking about when I first moved to Liberia, I started dating him. He told me I was his girlfriend. We were having a conversation and he was like, yeah, something, because you're my girlfriend. And I was like, oh, I am? And he was like, you're not? You know what I mean? Like, I was like, oh, well, I guess I am. I'm just so used to having to jump through hoops for a guy to even tell me that. So
yeah, I feel like a lot of us have been so like traumatized with relationships with Americans. And I mean like all Americans, because I'm someone who is equal opportunist. Like my background is like I have grown up in a very diverse city. Like I always went to school and was around with every race you could think of. I've had white friends, Asian friends, African friends, like all across the spectrum, European friends. And so I date anybody like anybody. I don't really care. That's not something I'm thinking about. As far as my family, certain people, I guess, prefer white people. I think a lot of, this is where like background comes in, because my great grandparents, they grew up in a predominantly white town. They were one of two Black families. So I think historically they felt more comfortable with white people and a certain kind of background. So I've had many of my cousins say like a lot of Black people don't get them and don't get us, so they always date white people. And so a lot of my cousins are in relationships with white people. My sisters are with white people. And I've just dated everybody because I don't really care.
Right.
And but it's been an issue where I've had like where I can see where the difference in a response when I talk to a white person and a Black person. I remember one time I was dating this guy who was he was Black, and he had a kid. He was an officer, so he had a steady job and everything. He was a great guy. And my mom was just like, "Why are you with him? Do you really like him? Are you really trying to date him?" I'm like, "Yeah." Like he was probably the first guy I actually really felt safe with. And then it was maybe not, like, it didn't work out, and so it was maybe, I would say, a few months later or something. My mom came to visit me, and we were hiking because I was in a hiking group with my church. And so one of my friends he was a white guy. He had a kid, did not have a job, was just floating around bartending. His ex was not great at all, was like, issues with addiction and all this stuff. And I was like, "He's a really nice guy, you should date him, I know he likes you." I'm just like, what? Like,
What?
I was like, "You're literally only telling me this because he's white. This is crazy." And she's like, "No, that's not it." And I'm like, "Dude, you're in denial. Like, that doesn't make any sense."
And it's so interesting to me because, like, usually you hear Black families wanting their children to be with other Black people, like as a spouse. This is really my first time hearing. I mean, no, I can't. This is my second time because, in my family too, like that narrative was said, not to me, but to my cousins. But we can talk about that as time goes on. But, for your parents to prefer, or your family to prefer a white person, is just, that blows my mind. I mean, I've just never really heard a Black American. And I think that that's important to say, like a Black American family say that. So yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah. It's something that I used to just kind of brush off when I was a bit younger. But I think since like being educated in American studies, like my degree is in American studies, and which covers the different uprisings in America, different social movements, the inequality between race, class, gender, sexuality, all that stuff. Like, I'm more vocal about, when I hear certain things. And so it's not really something I stand for, but still I hear these things. I'm just like, can you stop? Like, I'm talking to somebody now who's Black, and he's a Black Latino. And it was brought up that, like, well, you don't know him. What if he's dangerous? What if he's gonna what if he wants to sell you into sex slavery, sex trafficking and stuff?
Lord.
And I'm just like, this is crazy. Like, you never brought this up before. I have a friend in London, and he's a white guy, and I met him last year, like in person, but we've been like online friends for like 8-9 years. But I met him last year, and I was like, you never said this. You never said anything. And I told the guy that I'm talking to, like, that they said that, and he said the same thing. He's like, yeah, I don't think they'd say that if I was like a white guy from Australia. And it's so true. And then, like, when I was talking to him, people would bring up, oh, well, what if he's only talking to you because he wants citizenship. He wants to be American.
You know, that's a big one.
That's
like,
yeah. And I'm like, you didn't ask me that about my London friend. And he literally actually wants to live in the States. This person doesn't, but like, because he's white, that's not something that you're thinking about. And so that's what I am having to battle a lot. And it's really frustrating.
I can imagine. I can imagine. Like, so how did your mom meet your dad, and how did your aunt, is your aunt that was married to an African as well?
Yeah.
How did they meet? Because I assume since your grandparents grew up in a predominantly white area, I assume your mom and your aunt did as well.
No.
Okay.
No, they grew up in Philly. So,
okay.
Well, actually, the area that they lived in back in the day was more white. It is very black now. But yeah, I don't really know what they were told growing up. I don't know where any of this comes from. But my aunts, where did my aunts? I think I know one of my aunts met my uncle in college, so he was already here in the States in college. My other aunt, I think she met him at work, and my mom met my stepfather here. Like my aunt introduced them. Yeah, so they all met here. It wasn't anywhere else. I don't. Yeah, I have no.
Because I would think they would more so say, "Don't marry an African man," rather than say, "Don't be with a black man." You know what I mean?
It's like both.
Yeah, it's both. Wow, that is. I mean,
it's both. They don't care if I'm like with anybody. Like I've gone out with like Asian guys or whatever. They don't care. I don't get that same kind of questioning. Yeah.
That's so interesting. I mean, I know I keep on saying it because it's literally something that I've never really experienced. Because like I was saying, the only experience that I had was with my aunt. You know, this was an aunt that married my uncle, so my mother's brother's wife. And you know, she was an ambassador. She had a lot of she was very exposed. She lived out of Liberia for a while. She went to the University of Syracuse. You know, she was the ambassador of Italy, so she was in the foreign service. So, you know, she's traveled around quite a lot. And I remember when we were young, you know, she would always tell me and my cousins, like, yeah, like, make sure you marry a white person. Like, and it's funny because like when she would say it, I will say for myself, because I can't have anybody else's experience. Me, I always thought it was a joke. You know what I mean? Like, she's just being funny, because she is a very funny, you know, she likes to crack jokes and stuff like that. She's silly. She's great. She's like, yeah, like, make sure you marry a white person because, you know, you'll always have good things. Like, you always have good things, and you don't have to like worry about their family trying to like mooch off of you and all this stuff. Like, these things that you hear about that quote unquote Black people do when, you know, because they try to say that usually Black people are trying to marry up, you know, and stuff like that. So she used to always say it as a joke. And it was just interesting to me to see later on in life how my cousins who she was talking to, which were actually her children, they all, not all, but there's 4 of them. 3 of them married white people, and one of them married, I believe he's mixed race, which to me, you're still melanated if you're mixed race. So I consider him to be a Black person. But I just thought that it was so interesting to grow up and actually see them marry white people. So it's like, did they really take that to heart? Was she secretly in the corner, like really telling them like, no, I'm serious. Like, you know, whereas me, I thought she was playing, you know what I mean? And she's really telling them like, this is what you need to do. You know, does it not have anything to do with what she said at all? You know what I mean? But it was just really interesting to see that, you know, see that now. So yeah, for you, but your family is very serious about it. There's no joke there.
Yeah. It's not my whole family. It's some people. I think now that my grandmother is older and like seeing that there's a lot of white people in our family, she's just like, okay, well, like, it's a kind of enough. It's kind of enough.
Yeah. And, I hear you because even like with my cousins, you know, they're the ones that have, you know, I don't have kids yet, but they're the ones who have started that next generation of our family, and they are all mixed race. except for, there's one of my cousins who, she married a black guy, she married a Jamaican guy, so her kids are like black, but yeah, my cousin's kids are mixed race. And I'm not saying that there's anything wrong with that. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that. It's just interesting to see, where the family has turned, you know what I mean? Where we were African people, black people, and then now our descendants or future generation are very, very, very fair skinned with soft curly hair. So yeah.
Yeah, all of my nieces and nephews are mixed. And so so like my sister-in-law, she's a, like, so I'll say a biracial Puerto Rican. Her mom was her mom was a white Puerto Rican, her dad is black and Native American. And so
Okay.
she's very, very fair. And I'm kind of her last hope, because she's just like, we need chocolate babies.
Wait, who said we need chocolate babies?
My sister-in-law. She like doesn't really like being so fair, and that her kids turned out pretty fair too. And she's like, we need chocolate babies.
That's
like,
hilarious.
Okay.
I mean, there's nothing like a little chocolate drop baby though. I mean, just, they're the best. I came across one on Instagram last night. I was looking at him for like an hour. He's just so cute. All babies are cute. Have you felt more feminine or more comfortable with a particular kind of guy regarding race or background?
Yeah, I don't think so. I think it just depended on the guy more so than anything else. Because I don't think I've ever felt like totally at ease or totally comfortable to be feminine with somebody like until the person I'm talking to now. And then I was softening with the police officer I talked to way back in the day, but that was kind of short-lived. It wasn't because of race or anything. It was just the kind of person that they were and like the energy and and their wherever they were in their masculinity. So, right.
Yeah, I know for me, like I said, my only white boyfriend was in 8th grade, but I do remember that he is the only boyfriend that has ever given me flowers. So there was that. He actually, he got his dad to drive him over to my house on Valentine's Day and gave me like 12 pink roses. And it was like the sweetest thing in the world. I mean, of course, I was a child. I was 14, 13 or 14. But, to be perfectly honest with the guys that I've dated, like, they've never really made me feel special in that way, where it's like I'm going out of my way to intentionally, do something sweet or caring for you. Right. I mean, little things, I'm not to say I was never cared for or made to feel special in my relationships. I guess they were just kind of different. And I guess it kind of ties back into what my aunt was saying, where it's like, white people, they'll make you feel, they'll do things for you. They'll make you feel special. They'll go out of their way, they'll spend money on you. They'll, you know what I mean? But to me, it's like, I can't say that a black guy, the right black guy that is for me, won't also do those things, as well. Yeah. So.
Yeah, because I've had that with one of the black guys I was talking to, and he was like, oh, what kind of coffee do you like? Okay. And then like he drove by to my office and dropped me a cup of coffee, or I wasn't feeling good, and he's like, I can come over and cook for you. So yeah, I don't think that's just because the white guys I dated, I didn't have, well, actually the last white guy I dated was pretty sweet and attentive. But yeah, that wasn't like every white guy. It was just the one. So,
yeah, for sure. Yeah. For sure. Yeah, you can't really say. I mean, I've been made to feel special by Black men. And I think that narrative is not out there enough for people to hear, because, there are good Black guys out there. And just because a guy's Black doesn't mean he's bad. Just because a guy is white doesn't mean he's good, vice versa. You know what I mean? Like, to me, it's just about the person who they are from the inside. Like you said, if they're operating from the masculine, you know, if they've done the work within themselves, they see you as a reflection of them, then, you know, they're going to treat you exactly how you need to be treated. So
Yeah,
that's just it. Yeah.
I will say about like the chocolate baby thing, that was like a trauma that I didn't know I had that I had to work through like about almost 2 years ago. When I realized that like I said, I'm equal opportunist, but I kind of just thought I would probably be with a white guy. And then I realized that it was more so just like the fear of having my kids having to go through something, like obviously they'd still be Black, but it'd be like maybe less of a thing, less of a hassle in life. And that was like a trauma that I didn't realize that I had to like work through, like, yo, this is messed up. Like, yeah, so I worked through all of that. So, but it's crazy, like what's just I don't know, what we absorb and how that like carries out into our lives.
Right. Yeah, definitely. And, you know, you have to think about stuff like that, because I feel like when people are in relationships, you know, they start off and it's just like in the now, like people aren't really thinking about what the future, you know, would look like. And even me, like when I was dating earlier on, I was open. I didn't care. You know, I mean, even now, like I said in the beginning, like if the right Asian, Hispanic, Native American, Indian, white, whoever guy walks into my life and God is like, look, this is the guy that I created for you to be your husband, I'm with it. You know what I mean? But me just being within myself, and like you said, having to, for me, it's about culture as well. I think for me as an African, like culture is super, super, super important to me. Making sure that my kids are ingrained in that culture. Not to say that if they have a father from another race that they won't be, but I myself, the fact that I was born and raised in America, I'm a little watered down in my culture as well. So I would prefer, my preference is to marry a West African guy, preferably someone who was born and raised in West Africa, preferably somebody who's Liberian or of the Igbo descent from Nigeria, because my grandfather was Igbo, and I'm very much in touch with like my Igbo side as well. And wanting that to be able to understand our culture together as a family and like pass those cultures down to our children, because the fact that I'm watered down, I really don't want my kids to be watered down. I want my kids to be more African than me, to be perfectly honest.
Well, I don't want you to see yourself as watered down.
Well, I mean, okay. Well, thank you for saying that. You know, and that's the thing, right? Because people project their stuff on you. Because before I moved to Liberia, when I first moved, like you couldn't tell me anything. Like I'm Liberian down, down, down. You know what I mean? But when you're actually living in the space and people hear you say certain things in Liberian English and they laugh at you because it's like, no, you're not saying it right. Or you sound funny when you say it, or like, you know, stuff like that. And it's like, oh, well, I guess I am a little watered down, aren't I? You know, but I feel you. Thank you for that, Tiffany, because I know I'm a true African girl at the heart. So thank you for reconfirming that. I appreciate that.
Yeah, culture is very important. And that was another thing I had to recognize and reconcile within myself, because from what I was hearing from family and stuff about like, oh, don't marry a foreigner. But it was like when I went to Italy, they're like, oh, did you meet an Italian guy? I'm like, well, that's a foreigner. And
right.
Like,
right.
And it's like, oh, a certain kind of foreigners are okay. And I'm just like, I can't believe this is coming from my family. Yeah. And then if you're the Black person, it has to be with someone who's really, I guess, like, you know, proud to be Black too, because like I would have never thought I was going to talk to somebody in the Dominican Republic, because every story I've heard, and having Dominican friends, knowing that like a lot of them don't accept their Blackness, they don't consider themselves Black, and I'm like, what do you same color as me? And so to actually like meet somebody who is he's like, no, I'm Black. Like, I was like, thank you.
Yes. I love it.
Yeah.
I love it. I love it. Yeah, man, that's huge, the cultural aspect, and I love that he can be very much Black, he can be very much African, but then be very much Latino at the same time. I think
Yeah.
that's, absolutely amazing.
Mm-hmm.
And I know something for me that I fear a bit, maybe I shouldn't use the word fear. I'm fearless, you know what I mean? I'm not afraid of anything. That's one of my affirmations. But something that is noteworthy is this fantasy, right, of this white man seeing the Black woman as this fantasy, or this white woman seeing this Black man as this fantasy, right? Like this thing that you want to obtain, something that's like exotic and different and blah, blah, blah. You know what I mean? It for some people, that's very much the reality, where you think you're getting into a relationship with somebody who really loves you, but they're more so just having an experience with you. That's something that I will want to steer clear from and use a lot of discernment if I do ever enter into an interracial relationship, to consider, because it's a real thing. It's a real thing. You know what I mean?
For sure.
Yeah.
I've had that experience.
Yeah. Oh, you said you have?
Yeah, like it was brief. It was just somebody I'd met on Coffee Meets Bagel, I think, and he was Korean, and like everything just had to do with me being Black, and I was just like, okay, I'm not doing this with you.
So interesting. See?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's my concern. And and I always wonder what other people's experiences are. Like, I think about the lady, the main character, in the female character in Queen and Slim, Jodie Turner-Smith, who she got a lot of slack because she's this beautiful, chocolate radiant woman, and a lot of people didn't know that she was married to Pacey from Dawson's Creek.
Yeah.
What's his real name? Joshua. Yeah. Thank you, Joshua Jackson. Yeah. And she got a lot of backlash for that. I even have, believe it or not, I have a friend who, and he's a photographer. I'm kind of going on a tangent, but I promise it loops back in. He's a photographer, and his aesthetic is like Black excellence, right? So so when I watched Queen and Slim for the first time, I asked him, like, have you seen Queen and Slim? Because it reminded me of his work, the way it was shot. And he was like, no, I haven't seen that. And I was like, why? He was like, I don't know. He was like, partly because like the queen or whatever is like married to a white man. And I was like, really? I was like, that would stop you from watching an entire movie just because she's married to a white man? Wow. And I'm like, this is something that you would love. You have no idea. Like, if you were to watch it, he would love it. But anyway, so, she got a lot of backlash, like I said before, but I heard her openly say on one of her interviews that throughout her dating life, like, Black men weren't attracted to her. I mean, she desired to be with a Black man, but they weren't attracted to her. And she was like, Joshua Jackson was the first person that came into her life and really made her feel beautiful and appreciated. And, I mean? So of course, why wouldn't you marry somebody who makes you feel like that? You know what I mean? So I think people need to be very careful when they're forming their opinions and like dragging people about stuff like that, because you have no idea about what this person's experience was, exactly. No clue. So.
Yeah, I don't understand why people take that stuff so personally. I feel like whoever you are, you need to go where you're watered. Whoever waters you, whoever like allows you to bloom and feel your full self. Like, my only concern is being happy and seeing other people happy, especially Black women.
Absolutely. Black women. Absolutely. Because it's hard out here for us.
Yes.
It's hard out here for us. So any last little tidbits before we wrap up?
Last tidbits. I would just say be happy, and like whoever you choose to be with, let it be, let it be because it's coming from an authentic place of actually caring for the person and loving the person. It annoys my soul to see people get with other people literally out of spite. I'm not going to get into specifics because, but I've seen people just, get with another race out of spite for, one of their own. And it's not a good look,
Mm-hmm.
Get with somebody because you genuinely love them and what they bring out of you and what you bring out of them, no matter what they look like and no matter where they come from.
Yes. Amen. Amen. And for me, I guess mine would be, honestly, just wait for God's best. You know what I mean? I think that that's what's important, especially if you're a woman like me who's looking for something, long lasting. If you're dating, maybe this advice doesn't apply to you, but, if you feel as though that you're with someone, no matter what they look like, no matter what their background is, and you honestly feel as though that this is God's best for you, this is who God created for you to be with, then that's all that matters. And that needs to be the driving force within the relationship outside of anything. So that's definitely my last tidbit before we head on out. Wait for God's best.
Wait for God's best. I love it.
All right, guys. Well, thank you so much for joining us for the first episode of the Feminine Waters podcast with Tiffany and Chiquita. This was great. And we hope that you enjoyed it as much as we did. And we'll catch you next time.
Bye.
Peace.